I remember the day I was scrolling through a sea of budget gaming rigs, and I almost bought a $700 pre-built that promised 4K ready on the front page. Within a week, the frame rates dropped, the fans went crazy, and I was swapping out the GPU like it was a loose screw. It's a feeling that sticks with anyone who's ever tried to save a few bucks on a gaming PC, only to regret it when the game stutters at the boss fight. That's why today I'm looking at a machine that tries to dodge that trap, the KOTIN Prebuilt gaming PC with an AMD Ryzen 5 9600X and an RTX 5060. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first question most people have is whether this box is just another cheapo that will break under a few titles, or if it actually gives you a solid foundation for modern games without having to upgrade in 6 months. I spent a few evenings setting it up, running a mix of AAA titles at 1080p and stepping up to 1440p on a 144Hz monitor, and I'll break down what that felt like in real life. I'm not going to read you a spec sheet, the numbers are on the page, but I'll tell you what they mean when you're actually trying to get through a raid, a fast-paced shooter, or a creative workflow. Let's start with the heart of the system, the Ryzen 5 9600X. It's a 6-core, 12-thread processor that can boost up to 5.4 GHz. In practice, that means you get snappy load times in worlds like Cyberpunk 2077 and almost no hitch when you're swapping between a game and Discord. I tested launchers, mods, and even a quick edit in Premiere Pro, and the system handled it without the dreaded CPU at 100% wall that you see in cheaper builds that rely on older Ryzen 3000 chips. The DDR56000 memory also feels real fast. There's a noticeable jump when you go from 16GB DDR4 at 3200 MHz to this faster kit. Game texture streaming is smoother, especially when you bump the graphics settings higher. Now, the RTX 5060. It's not an RTX 3080, but the 8GB of GDDR6 is more than enough for 1080p and decent at 1440p. In my tests, it held steady 7,080 frames per second in titles like Elden Ring at high settings, and around 5,560 frames per second in more demanding titles like Horizon Forbidden West when I cranked up the resolution to 1440p. That's respectable for a mid-range card, and the DLSS support works nicely, pushing frame rates up without a huge loss in visual fidelity. If you're the type who watches movies on your gaming rig, the video playback was buttery, no stutter, just a clean picture. One of the hidden trade-offs people often overlook with pre-built boxes is the cooling solution. KOTIN opted for a digital ARGB fan array that actually does its job. Under load, the temperatures hovered in the low 70s Celsius, and the fans ramped up in a way that didn't feel intrusive. You get a bit of a visual flare, but more importantly, the noise level stayed under 30 dB most of the time. In a small apartment, that's a relief compared to some budget rigs where the fans scream like a jet engine during a boss fight. Power is another area where the KOTIN machine shines, a 650W80 plus Gold certified PSU. That's a bit of a safety net if you decide to upgrade the GPU later. The Gold certification means it's efficient, so your electricity bill won't spike dramatically, and you won't have to worry about overloaded rails as you push the system a little harder. It also means the unit can handle a higher-end card if you ever want to swap the RTX 5060 for a 3060 Ti or even a 4070, though you'd need to check physical space constraints. So who should buy this? If you're a gamer who mostly plays at 1080p, maybe dips into 1440p with a 144Hz monitor, and you want a system that works out off the box without tweaking BIOS or swapping parts, this is a solid pick. It's also a good fit for creators who need enough horsepower for occasional video editing, streaming, or 3D modeling, because the Ryzen and DDR5 combo give you a comfortable headroom. The Wi-Fi 7 module is future-proof, so if your house is still on older routers you won't see a bottleneck. The built-in Ethernet port is also there for those who prefer a wired connection. On the flip side, if you're chasing ultra-high settings at 4K, or you plan to run multiple RT-heavy titles simultaneously, you'll hit the card's limits fairly quickly. The RTX 5060 is decent, but it won't push 4K 60 frames per second in the newest releases. Also, the storage is a 1TB PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSD, which is fast, but if you already own a larger HDD for massive game libraries, you'll need to add a secondary drive. The chassis is functional but not extravagant, a plain tower that won't win any design awards. If aesthetic pride is a major factor for you, there's room to customize the case later, but that adds cost. Another subtle downside is the lack of